It is officially winter, and even though we're all taking precautions, it is high cold and flu season. Staying hydrated properly is key to helping your body deal with all this stress, and nothing has worked better for myself, my family, my patients than it is officially winter, and even though we're all taking precautions, it is high cold and flu season. Staying hydrated properly is key to helping your body deal with all this stress, and nothing has worked better for myself, my family, my patients than Hydrolyte, the amazing rapid rehydration drink mix you've heard me talk about for quite some time. I've been obsessed with it. Also, in time for cold and flu season, they have their latest formulation, Hydrolyte Plus Immunity. It's become a huge favorite around this household. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity starts with their fast absorbing electrolytes and a host of great ingredients. Each single serving, easy to pour drink mix contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, 300 of elderberry extract. They've created a great tasting formula that's high in antioxidants and zinc. Remember, zinc's very important for the immune system. They've combined this with Hydrolyte's 7 key electrolytes, making this a fantastic way to stay properly hydrated. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity comes in convenient, easy to pour powder sticks that rapidly dissolve in water to make a great tasting drink that has 75% less sugar than your typical sports drink. It uses all natural flavors. It is gluten free, dairy free, caffeine free, non GMO, vegan. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity is also now available in ready to drink bottles at Walmart next to the pharmacy. Or as always, you can find it by visiting hydrolyte.com/Dr. Drew. Again, hydralyte.com/DRDREW. And be sure to use the code Dr. Drew 25 at checkout for a special discount.
Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew, and thank you for Hydrolyte.
Oh my God. A couple of things. Welcome, everybody. It's a privilege to be here. If I am slow, I apologize, and I'm sure I will handle about 45 minutes, and then I will sort of burn out on that at that point. Couple things that I took home from my experience with COVID, and one is that I'm going to be doing a lot of different things to avoid infectious diseases going forward. Halidine to prevent viruses from getting into my mouth, nasal cavity, UVC light with the eye wand, and then Hydrolyte. I used so damn much Hydrolyte when I was sick. Thank you to those people. I was so grateful for them. There was one night particularly when I was doing kind of poorly, and I had literally 7 sticks of Hydrolyte, and I felt a lot better afterwards. Yeah,
I noticed a difference in your skin on
you were the one
Instagram because your forehead was all wrinkly one day, and I think you were super dehydrated.
That's you were the one that kind of alerted me. Was Joe Giannotta?
Joe, yeah. He said, take the Hydrolyte. And I was like, right. Oh, yeah, that.
He was absolutely right.
Well, we tried it early, and you were just too nauseous to have anything.
Yeah. No.
And also our friends at Halidine. I've been using the Halidine swabs.
And she has not gotten sick. So
yeah, well, I don't know if that's the reason.
Well, it's one of the things to tell. Do what you can, everybody. You don't want to get this thing and get the vaccine as soon as you can.
I'm just a cockroach.
I am
a woman's body.
So mortified by the vaccine rollout. I can't even tell you. I had a patient just this morning tell me that the VA contacted him to give him the vaccine. Where did that come from? Why aren't we aware of this? They're just like no information going on. But anyway, we have our Zoom group here. You can see alongside of me from Locals.
Yeah, anybody who wants to join, go to locals, drdrew.com/locals and join.
We are going to have the Zoom group on this conversation a little bit with Robert Henderson. Of course, Robert is a Gates Cambridge scholar at the University of Cambridge, BS in psychology from Yale. And he's a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. He has a very interesting story himself, and now he's going to be a social psychologist. Before I go to him, however, I want to tell you 2 thoughts I had being sick that I thought were sort of interesting. One was people kept asking me if I was afraid. And I found that to be just a bizarre question. I was like, why? I have even if you assume I'm in a higher risk category than perhaps I am just by virtue of how sick I got, still a 95% survival rate. Why would I be afraid of this thing? It's just a question of how much misery and how much morbidity and how much we have to go through. When I got my prostate surgery for prostate cancer, I was told
more afraid.
I was told I had a 90% cure after that surgery. As a physician, I consider that a cure.
I was afraid for that.
A cure. And when I'm told that there's a 99% probability that I'm going to make it through, survive an illness, I consider that you don't have to worry about being in that 1% unless you start going towards, you clinically start heading in that direction, end up in the hospital and keep getting worse, that kind of stuff. And surely that can happen, but treatment works. You've heard me talk about it on these streams before and on Instagram. You got to know what the treatment is. You got to demand it. You got to get good treatment. It's covered by everything. It's available to everyone. Get the good treatment and don't be afraid of this thing. Now, the one thing that I did kind of ruminate about was the clotting risks, because that's sporadic and we really don't know the risk. I can tell you it's 1% probability of fatality, but the probability of stroke and heart attack and all that stuff, that's sort of a sporadic thing. So it's harder to assess that risk. So my physician with me took measures to reduce that risk by putting me on dexamethasone and aspirin and other things and moved around a little bit. The other thought I had that was sort of strange while I was lying there miserable was how happy I was that I could take the bullet, but that taking the bullet and lying there miserable and thinking about people whose lives were ruined by the lockdowns and the economic upheavals and the mental health consequences was almost too much to take. It was almost overwhelming, just that thought. And so I did a little TikTok yesterday where I just said, I want people to live. People need to live.
You did a TikTok?
I did one, yeah. I'm just
did
experimenting.
Did you use your Dr. Drew TikTok page?
I think so. I don't really understand TikTok. It's hard for me to figure out. But the point is, I want people to...
Did anybody see it?
I doubt it.
Let's look.
No, don't. Please don't. I stared at a lot of TikTok while I was sick, and just because I was so in such a fugue
He didn't even look at his laptop the whole week. He was on his phone. Or the whole 2 weeks.
I was in such a fugue state. It was ridiculous.
That was weird.
My son, Andrew Ashkashvili, walked through it the way a 28-year-old, 27-year-old should walk through it, which is nothing. Flew for 4 days, done. Which vaccine do I think is the safest, Tim? I am heading towards Novavax. It's the one I'm probably going to take. I'm going to have my immune system checked with Aditech score. We'll tell you more about that later in the week. And when I if my antibody response, which is exuberant, starts to go down, we'll check my cellular immunity to see if I have T-cell helper and B-cell memory function. And if I don't, that's when I'm going to get the Novavax vaccine. Dr. Fauci came out day before yesterday and said that even if you've had it, you should plan to get it after 90 days. In other words, if you've had COVID, you should get the vaccine after 90 days. I understand why he said that. I think I would say the same thing if I were in his position. I don't think that's necessarily the most sophisticated way to deal with this. And I worry that it's a waste because people like me are probably going to be immune a lot longer.
Okay, everybody's piling in here.
All right, there's some good studies that showed that 8 months is at least how long the immunity lasts. So, Brian, I'm going to help people get that Aditech score thing. I don't know what to tell you just yet. So let me. I'm going to switch gears out of COVID.
We'll go back because I know you'll be ready for it.
I'm tired of COVID. I'm really tired of it. I'm just to give you my own update. I'm still coughing. I'm still short of breath. I'm still a little foggy. I fatigue like
You look fabulous.
Extraordinary fatigue.
But it might be these cool lights that were sent to us, these key lights. I want to give a little shout out to the key light people for giving us great lighting to make Drew look good.
That's so funny.
Make old people look young again.
That is so funny.
We haven't done any promotion for them yet. I don't know what Caleb's doing. He set it up. So
all right, let's bring in the great Robert Henderson from Cambridge University, where he is.
Speak to us, Robert.
Where he is a
great to be here.
PhD candidate for social psychology. You heard my little preamble there. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Dr. Drew. I'm good. How are you doing? How are you holding up through all of this? I mean, I heard you describe it a little bit, but where are you in your process now? Do you think, how much longer until you sort of will be 100%?
I am counting on not being a long hauler. Of course, that may be wishful thinking. That may be a cognitive dissonance, but I'm going to count on that for the time being. And my bet is, judging by how tiny increments I make every day, about a week to feel something like normal from here.
A week.
Because I don't feel anything like normal right now. I'm kind of worried. I'm worried I'm just going to all of a sudden. But I'm day 18. I'm out of bed. I put pants and socks on for the first time today.
Wait, you were wearing those cool pants
I
you
was
got from Corolla,
I
though.
was wearing public rec pants the whole time, which are sort of in the sweatpant category, but I put on jeans this
Yeah,
morning.
he put on his skinny jeans.
And
He's looking pretty
whenever I
good.
watch your live streams, I always wonder if it's just the top or if you're wearing the pants as well. You know,
Show everybody your butt.
there has been times when I've stood up from a television interview here where there was no pants on. So, but
gym shorts.
So what's occupying you, Robert, these days? What are you thinking about? You wrote an article. Was it yesterday, Susan? That article came out.
No, on the 27th, right?
27th.
Tell only lies.
Talk to us about
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. I wrote this piece for City Journal. This was a few weeks ago. It came out on the 27th. But yeah, just something that I've been thinking a lot about is self-censorship. And so this all, I thought about this and I wrote about this before the sort of recent, social media banning and so on that's going on right now, and the controversy with Parler, with Trump's account and so on. This was weeks ago. I'm a little bit concerned with what's going on with, not just sort of big tech censorship, but also self-censorship, how frequently people are sort of quietly voicing their opinions when they think no one is listening. But then when it comes to social media, or when it comes to being in a public space, people are sort of much more reluctant to express their true views about, say, the lockdowns. Publicly, we all have to be very much, for stringent lockdowns, but then privately, I've heard a lot more conversation about, how much longer is this going to go on? How much is it really helping? Is it worth the economic costs and so on?
Well, look. I'll direct you to Los Angeles, California. We have the most lockdown state in the most lockdown county in the most lockdown city, with the most egregious failure in terms of containing the illness. It's not working. Mm-hmm. And what I can't understand is why they can't adjust course. Let's look at this and figure out and what should be done and what's going wrong. And instead they seem blinded. It's very strange. It's nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah, it was very odd. I mean, just the whole trajectory of all of this. Things are happening so quickly that it's difficult, I think, for a lot of people to even remember that at the very beginning, sort of political and media leaders were telling us that everything was going to be fine, and that this wasn't a big deal. And this sort of controversy about masks and how we didn't actually need to wear them if you weren't having symptoms. And then it sort of went completely in the opposite direction. And now it is, this ongoing threat that we should all be terrified of. And there's no sort of middle ground. It seems that it's either one way or the other, and we can't have a more nuanced approach to it.
Or how about not even nuanced, but just evidence-based? Like, try to figure out. I mean, they try to, whatever this is not working. And maybe the fallback is, really aggressively roll out the vaccine or something like that, which they also seem strangely incapable of doing. It's so wild to me. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career, but here we are. Back to self-censorship. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I was just going to say, along this line, I'm hearing from friends of mine, friends my friends from undergrad graduated from Yale, and now they're sort of like, a friend of mine, he was a Marine, came from sort of humble beginnings, and now he's sort of spending more time among, people who are more affluent. He was in the Hamptons a couple of months ago, and he said that a lot of those people he knew, when they're out in certain environments, they're very sure to wear their masks and to sort of go through the whole ritual of safety. But then in the Hamptons, no one's wearing masks, everyone's partying, everyone's gathering in large groups. And so I think there's this sort of speaking out of both sides of your mouth, there's this sort of hypocrisy, especially from people who are particularly well off, who can sort of afford the economic costs of a lot of what's going on. And yeah, so one reason why I wrote that piece was because I dug into some of the data about self-censorship and how more and more Americans are afraid to express their personal views and their political views and what they really think.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is something that people are reacting to, and I think that's adding to some of the unraveling in the public health messaging. It's like, we are going to tell you how to behave, and then we'll do whatever we want. That is the other. You might look at some point, during the AIDS epidemic, we had spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to change behavior through public health messaging, and we figured it out. It took about 7 years, and we figured it out that you need a relatable source, somebody that the viewer can relate to, a narrative, a good story, humor, and that's it. That's what and then the information embedded within that. That's what caused people to change behavior. It's why I knew when they approached me to do that Teen Mom series, I said, this is going to affect teen pregnancy in this country. I knew it because the kids could relate to the teens, great stories. There was a lot of entertaining stuff going on, and the consequences were there. The consequences of the behavior speak for themselves. And we didn't say during the AIDS epidemic, if you have sex with somebody, you're a murderer. Can you imagine if we'd said that? Those words, think about it. Now, if you don't wear a mask, you're murdering grandma. That's what we're saying now. That is not public health messaging. That's not going to help behavior.
Yeah. And I think it's, this sort of, that kind of messaging is actually causing people to sort of go underground and be silent and still sort of break a lot of the official rules because they don't actually believe what they're hearing anymore. There's so much messaging and so much hypocrisy.
Exactly.
We were on the fence about talking about Drew's illness, and the PR people were like, no, don't do it. And I said, we're doing it. We're going to be transparent. We're going to help educate other people. People are just going to have, people don't like it. Too bad. We're going to talk openly about where we go and what we do.
I could make some, lemonade out of lemon,
and
right?
I think people are really appreciative. I've gotten really nice emails this week. I mean, at the beginning we had the backlash of the whole Dr. Droops episode, but that kind of went away when Trump went out and took over the news cycle, so we're fine. But it just they were all like, no, you probably shouldn't talk about it. Don't do it. And these are the people that we work with on our team, and I said, doing it. It's too late. It's done. So, I mean, it's hard.
Well, you're responding to Susan, the self-censorship issue.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to say, Robert. So of course the First Amendment is a government granted right, and of course a private company can do what they please in terms of who they have on their website, right? Can we all agree on that? When people go, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want. Yeah, of course. Here's the problem. Are they a publishing company? And if they're a publishing company, do they have some obligation to the social order that they wouldn't have if they were not a publishing company? One question. The other question is, this is not about the rights being granted in the First Amendment. It's about the exercise of those rights. If I have the right to stand up in a public square and speak freely, but every time I do that, people throw knives at me, well, whatever the government grants me is no longer void, no longer operating, because the social pressures are so profound. So the question is, what is the government's role in making sure people can exercise their First Amendment rights and privileges? There's a question there that no one seems to be dealing with in my mind. Am I onto something?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some interesting perspectives on this, comparing, for example, social media to telephones, right? Are telephone companies or cell phone companies responsible for what people say when they communicate? So if I call you and say something, is the phone company held accountable, held liable for what I'm saying to you and what you're saying to me? I don't think very many people would sort of think that they should be responsible for that.
But my question, though, is, can somebody jump on the line whenever they wish and just cut it? just because we're having a conversation. So
you can't have a phone anymore.
Yeah, there's some exercise of our granted rights and privileges that's at issue here. And I always think in terms of the public square. And Alexis de Tocqueville brought this up in 1828. He said that although, you ever read Democracy in America, Robert?
Yeah, I've read excerpts.
Well, he said that although we had the highest legally, I forget how he phrased it, but the most legally granted rights in terms of free speech, in terms of actual practice, we had the least. Because there was
because of mob rule?
Because of intolerance in the public square.
Right. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
And so the question then becomes, does the government have some role to keep the public square a safe place for the practice of that First Amendment privilege? I don't know the answer to this, by the way. I just think that that's where we should be discussing this thing, and people can't seem to get to that spot.
Yeah. I mean, it's been alarming to see that sort of principle not impartially applied anymore. So the study that I write a lot about in that City Journal piece, it was written by two political scientists, James Gibson and Joseph Sutherland, and the title of it is "Keeping Your Mouth Shut: Spiraling Self-Censorship in the United States." And what they did was dug through longitudinal data across time in the United States, panel data actually, and they found that, for example, a lot of people believe that the sort of peak of censorship in the United States was the 1950s with McCarthyism, with the Red Scare, with people being targeted for, supposed communist sympathies, and McCarthy was just targeting these people. So when they found the survey data in 1954, they asking Americans, do you feel free to express yourself? Do you feel free to sort of speak your mind? Only 13% of Americans in the 1950s reported that they were afraid to express themselves. And they tracked this over time. And by the 1980s, it had jumped to 20%. And then in 2019, the response, it was 40% were afraid to speak their minds. So there's this sort of steady climb upward. And interestingly, this isn't necessarily a partisan issue. They found that roughly 40% of Democrats and 40% of Republicans both reported that they did not feel free to express themselves publicly. And so they broke down the data further, though. And this to me was actually interesting, because you might think that the people who are the most afraid to speak their minds are people who maybe don't have access to resources, who are sort of low on the totem pole, so to speak, in society, who aren't doing so well in life. They're the ones who are sort of afraid or more timid. But it was actually the reverse case. What they found is that the more educated people are, the higher, the more likely they reported being afraid to express themselves. So it was something like 44% of people with postgraduate degrees said they didn't feel free to speak their minds, compared to only about, I think it was like 25% of high school graduates. So it seems like, if it's 44%, that means that half of the most educated people in America are not being honest, or are afraid to be honest. And I don't think that is a good direction that we're heading in.
When was that data collected?
This was in 2019. So they.
I think now you'd find it. I think now you'd find it 65, 70%. There's no doubt in my mind. You can't. You can't talk about. You can think about how it is now. You can't even talk about an infectious disease. You can't talk about a medication. This is how crazy it's gotten. It's really beyond. Yeah. It's beyond. You can't have an opinion if it's not sanctioned in some way. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
You can't forget having an opinion. You can't even have a conversation where you're trying to refine your opinion. You can't do that. What do you think, Susan? What's the chance this conversation will be censored?
We've been censored in YouTube, and I spoke to the people that we work with at YouTube, and I told them that we don't make our livelihood on YouTube, and they can
for talking to another physician who had an opinion that I disagreed with.
Go ahead and censor me. I don't care, because we'll just go somewhere else. I don't care. But it is kind of weird, because Drew, it was medical misinformation. It was Kelly Victory and Dr. Zelenko, who are all very right-wing, physicians, and they want to help people.
Why do they have a wing? They're just doctors with an opinion about it.
No, I know, because they're on the right. They're not on the left. They get better ratings too. But
Crazy.
Anyways, but it's just it for me. I don't. There are other shows that Dr. Zelenko's been on that are still up. So I what I do now is I just don't monetize it. They pay me like $1.50 for each one of those videos, so I don't really care. And it's not, we're up in different platforms, and we still have the videos that every video we've done this year. But it just, for us to get censored means it's just ridiculous. And it's not, and it's international. Apparently, I guess it's some guy in Thailand that doesn't like it. It has nothing to do. I don't know. I don't think they even watch it. I don't think they even watch it. But Zelenko's been banned on YouTube, and so has Kelly Victory. So if I have somebody on my show who's been banned, they're going to ban my show.
Wow.
So here we are. Doctors aren't allowed to talk publicly together.
And maybe Facebook's next. We don't know. But we have our locals. Speaking of which, let's say hi to our locals.
All right. Let's see if any of the locals folks.
And I know Khalees Simone is here. She has a question for you.
Yes. Go ahead, Simone. Khalees, rather.
Oh, wait. Let me take this.
Wait. My brain is not working right at all.
You've got a good excuse, Drew. It's no problem.
It's normally I don't have an excuse, but at least I do now. How are you?
How are you doing on the new round of antibiotics?
Yeah. So okay. So to update everybody, I
Sorry to
developed.
bring it back to COVID.
Yeah, I developed on Friday. I developed diverticulitis on top of everything else. So when you're older and you get COVID, this is how people get into trouble. The wheels start coming off the wagon. It's this thing, then it's that thing, it's another thing. My thing was diverticulitis, so that really made me fatigued and gave me abdominal pain, all that good stuff. But the antibiotics I took, which I'm still taking, helped my lungs a little bit. They moved my lungs forward a little bit. My lungs have been constantly full. And I think that's a good part of the fatigue is the inflammation.
He's taking so much
lungs.
stuff.
I've taken a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
It's amazing.
Khalees, what's
Well,
going on?
all right. So the question I have for you, as I mentioned the other day, I have quite a few friends in their late 20s and early 30s that have had COVID. Some of them have had asymptomatic experiences with ongoing sort of long hauler type symptoms, and some of them had the full gambit. Most of them, as far as I know, had no underlying conditions, but every single one of them I've spoke to, whether they had an asymptomatic experience or a full-blown COVID experience, they have all experienced this ongoing depression and neurological condition that you were talking about. And I was hoping that you could say a little bit more about this, because I've always wondered, after having glandular fever myself when I was younger and experiencing a sort of long-term depression after that, how can a viral infection cause neurological, emotional issues after you've recovered?
I think that the short answer is I can't give you an explicit a mechanism, but it's been known for a long time. Back in the 80s, when I was working in the psychiatric hospital doing medical services at that point, there was a team of psychiatrists that was only treating post-viral depression. And they insisted that they were finding viral particles in the spinal cord, and they were trying to use, and we had very little antiviral. Remember, that was before, it was during AZT days, and we had very little antiviral treatments. And they were using iron infusions and magnesium infusions and all kinds of crazy stuff. Nothing really worked. Back then, it was under the moniker of chronic Epstein-Barr. They thought it was all Epstein-Barr related, and they were doing a lot of Epstein. But some of it was, most of it wasn't. And the bottom line is, I think of it this way. The immune system and the nervous tissue evolved together from common tissue in essentially the neural tube. The cells that become the neural tube and the cells that become immunological start in the same part of the embryo, and they diverge, and the brain and the central nervous system alters itself in such a way that it uses wires, essentially, axons, and synaptic clefts as a way of communicating, while the immune system develops into a similarly complex group of cells, but that use the blood system, cytokines, all the stuff we've been talking about, antibodies, things you hear more in the press these days about COVID. It uses these humoral factors as a way of communicating and affecting change in these immunological cells. Now, the immune cells, once they've been, so when it affects the immune cells, it makes sense that it's going to affect the neurocells profoundly as well. Now, it's not a one-to-one correspondence in the sense that, let's take COVID, for instance, the virus probably gets into all of our cells. That's the reality. But it probably alters the function more in terms of brain and immunological tissue. I'd sort of make that case as sort of a sweeping probability. And what I noticed is you can get a general, way a head injury sort of affects someone. That's what this felt like. It felt like I'd been hit on the head really hard. And in other words, the brain has been injured globally in some sort of way. The other thing I noticed is whatever psychiatric sort of proclivities I had were worse. So I'm anxious, OCD, although my anxiety wasn't bad during it, but my OCD stuff started kicking in. I started obsessing about things and having compulsive
This is
behaviors.
what people have been saying, that they're sort of, if they were already feeling a little prone to something, it was getting worse.
Exactly. And a famous psychiatrist named Menninger at the turn of the century believed that the 1918 flu was the cause of nearly all of the thought disorders he was seeing in 1920s, and the majority of the psychiatric pathology that he was hospitalizing, which is a fascinating observation.
So that actually brings me to a second part of the question, but keep going. Sorry.
One last thing I will add to this. The isolation with the, you have to isolate yourself when you have this, and that's crazy making. That's crazy making on top of everything else. So you add that to it, and it's like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm not happy.
I mean, that's definitely a huge part of any illness, is the isolation that causes a little bit of disconnection. But then I was also thinking,
not like this one. This one, you're making a practice of being by yourself. You know what I mean? You don't want anyone. You don't want to infect anybody. I think I infected my son because he slid eggs under the door every morning, and it mortifies me. Thank God he's the only transmission I had. I've checked all my contacts, and he is the only.
I slid eggs under your door longer.
I know you're the trailer park cockroach. You're fine.
Proud of it. I think it's because I'm taking progesterone, honestly, but that's just my thought.
Whatever works, right? But the thing is, if the asymptomatic people were all experiencing the heavy depression as well, that's what made me think, okay, it's something neurological. How does this work? And then the second part of that, which I started to think, well, the immune system may potentially be attacking the neurological system, perhaps it's inflammation. Either way, my understanding is the axons in the body, neurological system is really good at growing back. Is it fair to say these people will recover? This will go away. It's a short-term thing.
There is such a thing as no recovery, but everything looks like you can anticipate full recovery. That's what it looks like right now. But the question, this is a part that another. I had a third interesting thought. It wasn't just two interesting thoughts. It was a third interesting thought, which was a lot of focus on mortality with this disease, but the morbidity is really something. It really, 20% of cases are really suffer a lot or get long hauler symptoms or get psychiatric symptoms. So we should also remember that if in the risk categories, it has more than just fatality associated with it.
How do you think this could affect society and the economy moving forward? Because if we've got all these people...
Let's ask Robert that question. Let's bring Robert back in, because that's sort of his thing. What do you say to that one, Robert?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of how society is going to go, I mean, I think there's still a lot of, we were talking about this earlier, this kind of preference falsification of people basically saying one thing, but believing, or rather believing one thing and saying something else. And I think this is perhaps one reason why it's important for conversations like this to go on, and why I'm quite worried about these sort of both the self-censorship and then also the big tech censorship, because one way that you can sort of test out a view and see how people react to it is to sort of distance yourself and have this plausible deniability. So, people out there can say, well, Dr. Drew said X, Y, and Z, and sort of gauge people's reactions to that, and then to sort of see how people are thinking and feeling. And if they're not able to hear what you think or what anyone else thinks, then how are we supposed to sort of get to a consensus and sort of converge on a viewpoint that people actually agree with and can move forward with? As we continue to do this is a...
People are complaining my mic is low relative to the guest.
Okay.
But you come from you're doing not just psychology, you're doing philosophy too, right? Is that true?
Oh, well, not officially, but I read a lot of philosophy.
Yeah, so you do a lot of moral philosophy and stuff. But that's how that's done, is through dialectic. We're literally eliminating the dialectic of history, or at least of discourse. And I don't understand why that would be something people would seek or be enthusiastic for. My fear is my fear right now. I don't know about you, Robert, but my fear is we have all these unemployed young men. We have a group of people that are. We have one group that is. We have two groups that are angry, I guess, is the best way to say it, and seemingly nobody trying to appease or work for middle ground or bring together. Although Biden is trying, some of the things he's saying I actually like a lot. But I don't see any of the groups changing their point of view in any way. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, I think one cause of this polarization, I'm actually doing a lot of this research for my dissertation. What are the sort of external factors that can increase moral condemnation? So what are the kind of situations that people are in that will sort of make them express more moral outrage, cause them to become more angry at moral wrongdoing? And one line of research that I'm looking at right now, sort of working on submitting this paper, is we basically found that people who express more subjective worry about COVID-19, who basically say that they are, especially worried about contracting this illness, they also express more condemnation for moral wrongdoing, all kinds of things, hurting someone or stealing something or violating some kind of rule. And I think this is perhaps what we might be seeing, contributing to a lot of this, is that as people read more about this illness and sort of are in a sort of panic state about what's going on, this can sort of feed into their moral judgments and lead them to express more moral outrage, and
Although
sort of fuel more
my
disagreement and polarization.
experience of the people expressing the highest levels of moral outrage are people who are projecting their own moral indiscretions onto somebody else, frankly, or at least their own. It's like a cheating spouse accusing the other spouse of cheating all the time. You know what I mean? Like they see it in themselves and they assume they're going to see it in other people. Do you have any way of researching that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like what
projection.
Projection.
It's not just the panic. Like, why are these people so worried about it? What is it about the people that are most worried and who develop these, frankly, projections?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I don't know any research, as this relates to COVID, but one thing that I found in my own research is that this isn't the sort of relationship between worry about COVID-19 and moral judgment. It's not explained by political orientation. So we actually controlled for whether you're more left-leaning or right-leaning. and that didn't actually explain this difference here. So I think a lot of the anger we're seeing, it's not really necessarily due to politics, but it's just this sort of ongoing and relentless negative information and this sort of relentless anxiety and fear that's fueling all of this, regardless of where you happen to stand politically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, speaking of political behavior, do you have a sense of what is going on with this group that stormed Washington? And let me, because you have to say everything, of course I condemn that behavior. Of course. Please, everybody. It absolutely was beyond. But I've seen a lot of beyond behavior in the last 9 months. I blame COVID for a lot of it. I blame lockdown for a lot of it. What do we make of all that?
Yeah, well, just that, it's really interesting because I was just talking to a friend of mine who works at a bank and finance guy, and he was saying that like literally every time we jump on a Zoom call or a meeting, because he's still working from home, they have to go through that ritual of I condemn, the protesters, I condemn Trump, blah blah blah. And you sort of have to go through this ritual that actually it reminds me of like the commissars in Soviet Union, where like before every meeting you have to have this preamble of like, yes, we pledge allegiance to Joseph Stalin, and you have to like go through this whole ritual before you can move on to the business at hand. You have to.
It is exactly the same, and it's fascistic. And why don't people just get on with their? Most people want to be left alone to lead their lives. That's what most people want right now. And
there's something.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there's something there about how, I think especially right now, ideology might be soothing for people. If we can all like, even though there's all this crazy stuff going on, if we can all at least agree on what we all believe and sort of come to that consensus, there's something like socially soothing about it. Like, yes, let's all agree that we don't like this or we don't like that. And I think it sort of reduces some people's anxiety.
But I don't think it seems bottomless right now. It's almost like it's gratifying in some way, so it has to be reenacted to get the gratification out of it. Something. All of it seems. The craziness on both sides for me. I because I'm so moderate, I sit in the middle, and I have no allegiance to anybody. I've seen the craziness all the way along, and it's just getting worse. I wonder if anybody from Zoom has any questions for Robert. Susan, you want to pick somebody off Zoom?
I don't know, maybe wave your hand.
Hey, by the way, Tom Cigar, I wanted to say that I understand why you are jealous of me, because my immune response was very good, so I'm sort of free for the moment. Is that why you're jealous?
Exactly. I knew you were going to live. I knew it. I knew it.
I knew it too. That's the only. So I did have a moment of fear. I take it back. I told you I wasn't afraid. There was a moment of fear on my third day into the illness when I'd had multiple negative COVID tests, and I was lying in bed thinking, "Oh my God, if this isn't COVID, the only thing it could be is leukemia." Because I'm really sick, and I don't want leukemia. I want it to be COVID. And oh, by the way, I'll get some immunity out of that, which would be nice.
Hey, can I do a shout out to Anthony Brown right now?
Sure.
Hey, Anthony, say hi.
I don't see Anthony up there.
There's
Oh, there he is. Hey, buddy.
Hi, Anthony.
How's the vaccine distribution going at your hospital?
It went well. We did 252 people.
Great. How many inpatient do you have right now?
Inpatient, we have, I think, 40 psych and 47 Alzheimer's dementia.
And they're all vaccinated now, at least their first round?
I think we probably didn't do 10 because they were still within their.
Still sick.
Yeah.
Oh, so are you vaccinating even those who have been sick with COVID?
Yes. 2 weeks after, you're allowed to get the vaccination according to, what they were telling us.
Seems reasonable.
And
everybody got to think. Anthony has to control the infectious disease. You practice infection control in a highly concentrated environment. That's not, say, my issue. I can monitor my immunity pretty safely and not worry about a giant community that gets infected should I somehow get reinfected. It's a different thing.
Anthony got a little gift from us this week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Show us that. Look at that. We do UVC light. This is the IWAN people. They have a room sanitizer, and it's Optex room sanitizer, and we purchased it and gave it to the hospital.
Well, they gave me a little discount.
All right, good.
I had to buy it. But you can get the iWand at drdrew.com/iWand and use the code drdrew15.
When Susan came up with this idea, I'm like, oh my God,
sponsor.
yes. Anthony could use this, believe me.
And then,
watch your eyes around that thing, dude.
It wasn't
and your skin too. I see you're covered up there.
you might change color.
It's not about changing color. It's about cancers and things.
The machine, they give us glasses.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There we go.
I love it.
You're looking good.
You look pretty cool in those things, by the way.
I know you do. You do. Look at that. Ooh.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your gun, and your motorcycle.
And I had a little meeting with the locals, and I told them what I was gonna do, and they said that's not very personal. So I also got him a nice sweatshirt.
Right, okay.
I don't know if you're wearing it. Are you wearing it, Anthony?
No, I'm safe.
Charlie is asking the immunization practices. You can get vaccinated after 90 days of COVID infection. Yes, that is their formal recommendations. It's a different issue than infection control in an institution for people who are chronically hospitalized. Different question. So yes, and the question is, should you be vaccinated after 90 days? I think I'm still going to be immune at 90 days, and I don't want to take a vaccine from somebody else.
Yeah, me neither.
So that's sort of what we're kind of looking at. Anybody else have a question for Robert? I don't see any hands. Oh, there,
Chris.
Chris. Go ahead.
Hi there.
Hey.
My question is this, just in the aftermath of, the storming of the Capitol, now what we're seeing, just because of the amount of technology that's present there in regards to cameras, in regards to technology that can track Bluetooth, that can track any kind of Wi-Fi, GPS. Now we're seeing that a lot of the people who participated in this ending up on no-fly lists, or ending up on terrorist lists. And I do not agree with what happened at all. I think it was disgusting. I think it was very, very scary. But now we're at the point where technologically, this is going to follow people for the rest of their lives. And it makes me think, were people even aware that that could be a possibility, in this panic, riotous mindset that, a lot of people thought were there just to, protest. And obviously things got ridiculous and very scary and deadly and out of hand. And now it's, they're finding out who the participants were and categorizing them as acts of domestic terrorism. And I think it's just, I've never seen anything like this before.
Why didn't this happen during the BLM riots?
Amen, brother.
In Seattle and all this other stuff? How come why are the lists just starting right now?
Why is it now?
Yeah,
Why the attention?
exactly. What the hell?
Blame it on Zelenko.
You've all seen that picture from Black Lives Matter.
So,
All right.
Chris, I'm not
You're
sure
right,
I
dude.
quite get your
My-
question. Is your question
My
is
question is,
electronic
question-
monitoring a good thing or a bad thing, or should people be domestic terrorists even when they misbehave during a demonstration? What is the question?
I guess my question is this, is there anything existing within our policies, our laws regarding, just what is considered inciting like violence or hate regarding
Well, I'm sure
social
they
media?
are. I'm no one to be asked about that. But Robert, do you have any
Yeah, I
insight?
mean, just a couple of thoughts about it. I mean, of course, like if you're storming the Capitol, I mean, they were breaking the law. So if you're breaking the law, then of course you're going to experience the consequences. You know, you
I see. I'm
accept
generally in
those.
favor of electronic monitoring because
Mhm.
I think it will reduce people's proclivities to break the law. And if I don't plan to break the law, so monitor me, fine. And if I do, bring the full
Well,
consequences.
I think what people are concerned about, I think, is that they're taking the actions of these very few extremists and using it to create new policy that might affect the rest of us. Even if
Correct.
just like you, Dr. We're all just sort of law-abiding citizens, but now, you're sort of being tracked and monitored, or like social media accounts are being banned, people being deplatformed. Was it like all these various hosts are refusing to allow Parler to exist? So I think that's a lot of the concern here, is that you sort of stretch the actions of a few people such that now the rest of us are going to be affected in some way, even if we totally condemn what happened. I'm a little bit worried about that.
In this, again, my brain is not working that well, and I'm getting fatigue as I hit almost an hour here. State what you're worried about again, in a sentence or two, if you could.
Yeah. So basically, if a few people do something terrible, now you can use those terrible actions to justify laws that will affect the rest of us.
But that's always been the case, right? I don't think that's a new phenomenon, is it? But what is it about
I don't think
this?
it's a new phenomenon. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's a new phenomenon. But I think it should still be something that we're thinking about, and that we should be reasonable about. I think right now, tempers are high, emotions are sort of particularly charged, and I'm not sure that the best time to start implementing new policy.
Well,
Or impeachment processes.
well, I don't think you should be inflaming either side. I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And anybody that takes pot shots at either side, I'm interested in us finding a middle ground together. Again, most people are in neither group. Most people just want to be left alone, get on with things, but the angrier they get on either side, the more you have people piling into the boats. It's very concerning.
So Khalees has another question.
All right, Khalees, what's going on?
It's a medical question, so I didn't want to take you too far away from politics,
Go ahead.
but I saw some reports coming out of South Africa that there was a pulmonologist performing therapeutic bronchoscopy to remove mucus plugs from the lungs of COVID patients on ventilators, was able to get them off ventilators quite quickly. Is that something that we could be doing in California, maybe to get on top of the cases?
That's sort of a common practice, actually. So I don't know what. I mean, it's if people are having excessive mucus or plugging or at what's called localized collapse, that kind of thing, that's a very common practice right down the ET tube. So I don't know what specifically we're talking about there. I will tell you at Cedars-Sinai, they are shining a UVC light down the tube. They're taking a bronchoscopy and doing UVC lights to try to sterilize, or what was the word that the president used? He called it disinfect, to disinfect the lungs. That was the research he was quoting, but he didn't go all the way to talk about what was actually being done. They're still doing it at Cedars, to my understanding.
I see. So they are doing that in the US as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And it doesn't.
I just wasn't sure.
Doesn't do very much. The problem is the parenchyma of the lung is inflamed, and the inflammation is extremely active, and it impairs the ability to exchange oxygen. Moving mucus out of the airways is not so much the problem, typically.
I see.
So
thank you.
You bet. Okay, I'm sort of running out of steam a little bit.
I told Jordan to move the mucus out of his airway with some Dimetap.
Yes, you did.
I had to talk him into it.
He had a
though.
lot of congestion.
Yeah, and I was like, you got to keep those airways open. So I gave him Diamond Tap. Seemed to help.
Robert, what's going forward for you? What are you writing about coming? What should we look forward to?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, so just working on my memoir, a book sort of about my experiences in foster care and sort of how I ended up where I am now. As far as other essays, I'm working on a book review of Joseph Henrich's book, The Weirdest People in the World. So Joseph Henrich is a Harvard social scientist. Just wrote this incredible book, basically sort of documenting the sort of psychological differences among sort of people in Europe. And so I'm going to review that book probably for City Journal here in the next couple of months. And yeah, otherwise just posting interesting stuff on Twitter.
Was it Joseph Heinrich? Is that who you said did it? Wrote the book?
Yeah, that's right.
So he did an interview with somebody I think I would call a friend, Sean Carroll, on the Mindspace podcast. You might look that up. It's from January 4th. It's a very good interview. Sean is a crazy, brilliant physicist and a good podcaster.
He's been on your show a couple of times, right?
Yeah, I've had him on mine and stuff, and he's an interesting dude. So do you, Robert, have any solutions for us sitting here, just wanting to get on and live and not be encumbered? And I'm just not wanting to get caught up in all the craziness because like I would have no problem with, well, you tell me, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I know that there are sort of a lot of concerns about sort of reputational risks and how that sort of interacts with politics.
But what do we do?
Yeah,
what do we do? Do we just can't? It seems to me the best thing would be do nothing for a while. It's like if our government should just like focus on operating, just being an operational unit, let all this stuff calm down. I have a sneaking suspicion that most of what's going on is Trump derangement syndrome and COVID. Like that man created such intense reactions on both sides, and then the emotional experience of lockdown and the economic consequences and the psychiatric consequences. You add those two things together, and you have something out of control. And unemployment. Let's throw that in there, right? And if we let these things cool, I think people will start to be able to at least maybe discourse again. Maybe not great, not well, but at least a little bit. People won't be censoring quite so much. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that is sort of just disengaging from a lot of this. Just one thing that I do, I try not to follow a lot of political stuff on social media. I try to spend more time with people in my actual personal life, not spend so much time worrying about the latest outrageous piece of news. So just sort of focusing more on ourselves and our own lives. I heard you and Adam talking about this, and he said that 2021 will be whatever you make of it. You just have to sort of be responsible for your own life and your own sanity, and not
think that's
dictate how you feel.
It's a great note.
Thanks for the shout out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Susan, quick on the draw there.
I gotta get that ready.
Let me go back to
somebody wants to know if they had if they have symptoms, they took a COVID test and it was negative, if they should do another one.
Yes.
And we had that experience.
I didn't
first day. Yeah.
First day and a half I was negative. Then day 4 I was positive.
Yeah.
So
definitely
absolutely,
test,
it takes a couple
treat
days.
Treat it like you have COVID until you get your test back.
Yes, that is good advice. Solid advice.
I learned that.
Solid advice. Okay, let me go back to the Zoom. Guys, Zoom, I'm so sorry. I don't have the energy right now to kind of call, really interact the way I should.
We have a good group of people.
You guys have
been
there. You've been very patient. Does anybody have any burning questions? Because I do have to kind of wrap things up. I'm my brain and my body, it just can only tolerate so much.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Okay, and here's my disclaimer. I think what happened in Congress was wrong.
Yeah. It's horrible. Okay, we know. It's all bad. I got it.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to break into buildings and get away with it.
No.
But my thing is, do you think this is a strong enough statement to have the people in Washington actually do more of their job?
Well,
There's a crazy thought.
yeah, Anthony,
Nope.
I have thought things like that quite a bit. I've thought things like, oh my God, you're going to go do another impeachment proceeding? Please don't. You're going to make him a martyr. You're going to waste your time and energy. Just cool
And money.
out. Let it. He'll be gone in a few days. Relax. Let's just get on with the business of the country. I've thought that a lot about the state of California, especially, and it seems like people are gripped in this ideological sort of storm where they can't seem to think pragmatically, I think. And so, yes, Anthony, I think that's a good note. Absolutely. Just be pragmatic, everybody. Just stop reacting. Be pragmatic. By the way, you got to remember, I've been saying, let Anthony Fauci be your North Star since the day this damn thing started, and I've never wavered from that position. What I said was stop listening to the press and everybody else and all the craziness that's out there. And then little did I know how crazy the states were going to get. But I just kept saying, listen to CDC, listen to Anthony Fauci. And that's a year I've been saying that.
Except for I saw him on TV the other day say that we have to wear masks, even if we've got the vaccine or we've also had COVID-19.
He has a reason for that. It may not be a great reason, but he has a reason.
And I can't remember specifically what he said. I don't know if anybody else heard it.
He's going to say that a certain percentage of people are going to acquire the virus after they've been infected, harbor it, and transmit it without getting reinfected.
Yeah, something like that.
We don't know. That might happen. So he's saying, because that might happen, I want you to wear a mask. Guess what? I'm going to wear a mask. So there you go.
But shouldn't we be able to fly or go about our business if we have had it or we've had the vaccine?
Yes.
And how are they going to make that happen? And maybe, hopefully, this guy that's going to come on the show tomorrow can explain to us how that's going to work.
Okay.
We have a great guest tomorrow. Oh, I don't have his banner up here. Hold on one second. Let me get it. Good segue, but I don't have the.
Who is it? Is it?
I can't remember his name.
Justin.
Justin. Here, hold on.
Just shape will be tomorrow.
I'll find it. It's Anthony Ashkenazi's
Andrew's
choice.
Recommendation. Yep.
And
Justin, I forget his last name.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
So why do I get the feeling that all of these rights and liberties that we've given up on are never coming back?
They're coming back.
We're going to wear a mask whether you're vaccinated or not.
I worry about all of that. But I think worrying about it will help increase the probability that we will gain them. You know what I mean? Don't roll over. Don't be, as Adam says, don't be a sheep. Let's all be together.
Yeah,
let's
be lions.
Unless a middle ground gets together, which I believe they will. I believe that most people just want to live their
lives and not being fucked with. Yeah.
And I will make this statement where I began this conversation, which was, when I laid there sick down on the field of battle, I just kept thinking to myself, I want everyone else to live. I want you to live. I want you to live your life. I'll take the bullet. I'll be sick, but don't not live because of this. We'll get the vaccine going. Let's roll that. Let's roll those vaccines out as fast as we can, and let's start to live again. That's become my sort of. That's been my mantra lately. So let's wrap this up. I am out of it, guys. Thank you.
Anyways, it's Justin Hart. Here he is.
Justin Hart.
And he's he tracks things, and I don't know. I'm not explaining this well. I had his bio, but he's
a little bit of a skeptic. We'll see. We'll see what he has to say. He's got interesting data. And,
maybe insight on what comes next.
He's getting, in my sort of sense of his stuff, is it gets close to Alex Berenson kind of territory.
There you go.
But a little more scientific. He's sort of really a scientist himself, if I get it right.
His bio. I had here earlier.
I'll need that tomorrow. But Scalise, thank you for stopping by. And Robert Henderson,
thanks for having me.
It's always a privilege to talk to you. Again, where should we find you, Robert?
Yeah, you can just go to my website at Rob K. Henderson, so Rob the letter K, Henderson.com.
When do you defend your thesis?
Next year. Yeah.
Good time. Then you coming home?
Yeah, I hope so. If there is still a home.
What does that mean?
I'm just joking. I'm sure the U.S. is still going to be fine. Yeah. I'll be back in the States. Next year.
All right. Good. All right. Thank you to Zoom guys who hung out.
Okay, I found Justin Hart's bio.
Sorry, I wasn't a little more engaged with you guys.
Can I explain who he is? Because I did terrible.
As soon as I finished the sentence. Sorry, I wasn't more engaged with you guys, but as you see, I'm really in the recovery mode, and it's hard for me to do much.
And I want to thank Andrew,
especially
Ashkavili.
multitasking type stuff. Go ahead.
Oh,
Susan.
look, Monica
Thanks,
put up a
Drew.
cute little heart. That's so
You
cute.
do that.
Aw.
Oh, Nino.
Monica's
Anyways,
all about the love.
Okay, so Justin Hart is an executive consultant with over 25 years experience creating data-driven solutions for Fortune 500 companies and presidential campaigns alike. Mr. Hart is a chief data analyst and founder of the rationalground.com. So he's going to give us some rational ground.
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah. So he was a locals members. Well, I don't know if Andrew Ashkavili is a locals member, but he was a fan request, and we were able to get him, and we're very excited about it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm going to go lie down now, and appreciate it. Tomorrow I'll be in here around the same time. Well, no, tomorrow in the afternoon, like 3 o'clock-ish, or maybe even a little bit later, Susan?
Yeah, I think we're at
3:30.
You have
3:30.
Fox, so we have to set that up too. We have to do that tonight too. You have Fox LA tonight.
Yes. And we will see you all tomorrow.
God
Feel
bless
better.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thanks, Dr. Drew.
Bye, Drew. Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye, guys. You bet. Thank you.
Bye.
Better.
Everybody's waiting for the after party.
I'll leave until you leave, Casey. Casey.
Did you get a flu shot, Casey?
I did. I got one.
Okay, you guys
a
are
month and a
live.
half
Mute
ago.
yourselves. I have to put the ad
Oh,
up.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry.